In the vast and violent landscape of the Second World War, millions of soldiers fought with rifles, tanks, and artillery. But behind the front lines, far from the trenches and burning cities, another war was unfolding, silent, invisible, and just as decisive. It was a war fought not with bullets, but with words, numbers, and machines. A war of minds. Hidden messages crossed oceans and continents every single day. Orders that determined invasions, submarine attacks, and aerial bombings traveled through radio signals disguised in complex codes. Entire armies moved because of a few encrypted lines transmitted in the night. And in secret rooms filled with mathematicians, linguists, and cryptographers, another army worked tirelessly to break those codes before it was too late. Some of the most dramatic moments of the war were decided not on battlefields, but at desks covered with papers filled with strange symbols. In this video, we will explore 20 fascinating facts about the secret codes of World War II, the hidden language that shaped battles, saved lives, and in some cases, shortened the war itself. To understand just how important codes were, we need to go back to the early years of the conflict, when secrecy had already become a weapon. It's great to have you here. If you enjoy these war journeys, I invite you to like, subscribe, or share a thought in the comments below. This helps others find their way here too. For now, let's begin our journey. Long before the war officially began in 1939, nations already knew that communication security would be crucial. In the First World War, armies had already experimented with encrypted messages, but technology in the 1930s was advancing rapidly. Radios allowed commanders to communicate instantly across thousands of kilometers, but radio signals could easily be intercepted. If an enemy could hear the message, they could also try to decode it. That is why the German military invested heavily in one of the most famous encryption devices ever created, the Enigma machine. Fact number 1. The Enigma machine was originally developed for commercial use. In the 1920s, German engineer Arthur Scherbius invented the machine as a way for businesses to protect confidential communications. Banks, companies, and diplomats were potential customers. But the German military quickly realized the device had enormous strategic potential. By the time the Second World War began in 1939, the German armed forces had adopted modified versions of Enigma to encrypt nearly all of their communications. Fact number 2. The Enigma machine created trillions of possible code combinations. At first glance, the machine looked like a typewriter inside a wooden box. But inside it were rotating electrical rotors that scrambled letters in incredibly complex ways. Each time a key was pressed, the rotors shifted position, creating a different encryption pattern. With multiple rotors and adjustable plugboard settings, the total number of possible combinations reached into the trillions. German commanders believed it was mathematically impossible for enemies to break the system, and for a time, they were right. Every day at midnight, operators across the German military changed the machine's settings according to secret codebooks. That meant that even if an enemy somehow discovered one day's settings, the entire system would change the next day. Fact number 3. Polish mathematicians were the first to crack the Enigma puzzle. Years before the war erupted, Polish intelligence recognized the danger posed by German encryption. In the early 1930s, a team of brilliant mathematicians, including Marian Rejewski, Jerzy Różycki, and Henryk Zygalski, began studying intercepted German messages. Using advanced mathematical analysis and intelligence gathered by French spies, Rejewski managed to reconstruct the internal wiring of the Enigma machine. It was a stunning breakthrough. The Polish cryptographers even built early mechanical devices designed to help decipher Enigma messages automatically. These machines were known as bomba kryptologiczna, early ancestors of the famous British code-breaking machines that would appear later. But Poland faced a terrible reality. As Germany grew more aggressive in the late 1930s, the Polish intelligence service realized that war was inevitable and that their own country might soon be overrun. In July 1939, just weeks before Germany invaded Poland, Polish intelligence secretly shared everything they knew about Enigma with British and French officials during a meeting outside Warsaw. That decision would change the course of the war. Fact number 4. Britain created a secret code-breaking center unlike anything the world had ever seen. Shortly after the war began, the British government established a secret facility at a quiet country estate called Bletchley Park.
At first glance, Bletchley Park looked like an ordinary English mansion surrounded by gardens and small cottages. But inside, thousands of workers labored day and night attempting to decode enemy communications. Mathematicians, chess champions, crossword puzzle experts, engineers, linguists, and intelligence officers were recruited in secrecy. Many of them had no idea exactly what the others were working on. One of the most famous figures at Bletchley Park was the brilliant mathematician Alan Turing. Fact number 5. Alan Turing helped design machines capable of breaking Enigma codes. Turing and his colleagues developed electromechanical machines known as bombs. These machines rapidly tested thousands of possible Enigma settings until they found one that produced meaningful German text. Once the correct settings were discovered, British intelligence could read German messages in near real time. But the work was exhausting and relentless. German operators constantly changed procedures. New rotors were introduced. Additional encryption methods were added. Every improvement forced the codebreakers to adapt again. The race between code makers and code breakers became one of the most intense intellectual battles of the entire war. Fact number 6. Some of the most important naval battles were influenced by code breaking. German U-boats, the feared submarines of the Atlantic, were sinking Allied ships at an alarming rate during the early years of the war. Supply convoys carrying food, fuel, and weapons from North America to Britain were under constant threat. But when Bletchley Park began successfully decoding German naval communications, the situation began to change. By reading Enigma messages, Allied commanders could sometimes redirect convoys away from wolf packs of submarines waiting in ambush. In other cases, Allied warships were sent directly to hunt the U-boats themselves. Historians estimate that the intelligence gathered through Enigma decryptions, known by the code name Ultra, shortened the war in Europe by at least 2 years. But the Code War did not belong only to machines and mathematicians. Fact number 7. Human error was one of the biggest weaknesses in secret codes. Even the most sophisticated encryption systems can fail if the people using them make mistakes. German radio operators sometimes repeated messages, used predictable phrases, or accidentally transmitted the same message twice with different encryption settings. These mistakes gave codebreakers valuable clues. At Bletchley Park, analysts carefully studied these patterns. Sometimes a single careless operator could open a window into an entire day's communications. The secret war of codes was not just a battle of technology, it was also a battle of patience, observation, and human behavior. And while the European theater was filled with cryptographic battles, another extraordinary chapter of code warfare was unfolding across the Pacific Ocean. There, the United States military would develop one of the most ingenious communication systems of the entire war, a code so unique that the enemy would never manage to break it. But that story begins with a language few outsiders understood and a group of soldiers whose role in the war remained secret for decades. By the early years of World War II, the War of Codes had already become a crucial battlefield. Across Europe, encrypted messages moved through the airwaves every hour, carrying orders that could determine the fate of entire armies. At Bletchley Park, British codebreakers were locked in a relentless struggle against German encryption. But on the other side of the world, in the vast and brutal theater of the Pacific War, a completely different solution to secure communication was about to emerge. Unlike the machines of Europe, this solution would not rely on mechanical rotors or electrical circuits. It would rely on language. Fact number 8. The United States created one of the most secure codes in military history using Native American languages. In the early months after the attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941, American military leaders faced a serious problem. Japanese forces were extremely skilled at intercepting and decoding radio transmissions. Many of the codes used by American units had already been compromised, forcing commanders to constantly change encryption systems. But the battlefield demanded speed. Messages often had to be sent instantly, especially during fast-moving combat operations. What the U.S. military needed was a code that could be transmitted quickly by voice, but remain impossible for the enemy to understand.
The solution came from an unlikely source. Philip Johnston, a civilian engineer who had grown up on a Navajo reservation in Arizona, proposed a radical idea to the United States Marine Corps. He suggested using the Navajo language as the basis for a new battlefield code. The Navajo language was incredibly complex. It had few written records and almost no non-Navajo speakers understood it. Even trained linguists struggled to learn its structure. Military officials were intrigued. Fact number 9. The Navajo code talkers created a code within a language. Simply speaking Navajo would not have been secure enough. If Japanese linguists ever captured a Navajo speaker, they might eventually decipher basic military messages. So, the Marines developed something far more sophisticated. Navajo soldiers created an entire coded vocabulary specifically for military communication. Common military terms were assigned special Navajo words that had symbolic meanings. For example, instead of saying fighter plane, the code talkers used the Navajo word for hummingbird. A battleship became whale. A submarine became iron fish. Even individual letters of the alphabet were assigned Navajo words to allow spelling when necessary. This system allowed extremely complex messages to be transmitted rapidly and securely. Fact number 10. The Navajo code talkers could send messages faster than encryption machines. During combat operations in the Pacific, speed often meant survival. Traditional encrypted messages could take up to 30 minutes to encode and decode. Navajo code talkers could transmit and interpret the same message in seconds. One famous example occurred during the Battle of Iwo Jima in 1945. Over the course of the brutal 5-week battle, Navajo code talkers transmitted more than 800 messages, all without a single error. Major Howard Connor, a U.S. Marine signal officer, later said, "Were it not for the Navajos, the Marines would never have taken Iwo Jima." Even decades later, historians still consider the Navajo Code one of the only military codes in modern history that was never broken. But while the Americans relied on language, the Japanese military relied on an extremely complex machine-based encryption system of their own. Fact number 11. Japan's most important naval code was known as JN-25. The Japanese Imperial Navy used an encryption system called JN-25 to send strategic military communications. Unlike Enigma, JN-25 was not a mechanical device, but a complex system of numerical codes combined with random additives. Each message was first converted into numbers using a large codebook. Those numbers were then altered using random numerical keys to produce a final encrypted transmission. To anyone intercepting the signal, the message looked like an endless stream of meaningless digits. Breaking it seemed nearly impossible. But American cryptanalysts were determined. Fact number 12. American codebreakers played a critical role in one of the most decisive battles of the Pacific. In early 1942, American intelligence began intercepting large volumes of encrypted Japanese naval messages. Analysts suspected that Japan was preparing a major offensive somewhere in the Pacific, but the target remained unclear. Within the encrypted traffic, Japanese planners repeatedly referred to a mysterious location identified only as AF. American codebreakers believed AF referred to Midway Island, a strategically important American base located in the Central Pacific. But they needed proof. To confirm their theory, American intelligence officers devised a clever trick. They instructed the Midway base to send an unencrypted radio message stating that the island's water purification system had broken down. Shortly afterward, Japanese encrypted transmissions reported that AF was experiencing a water shortage. The codebreakers now had their answer. Fact number 13. Codebreaking helped the United States win the Battle of Midway. Because American intelligence had partially cracked the Japanese naval code, U.S. commanders knew when and where the Japanese fleet would attack. In June 1942, American aircraft carriers were secretly positioned near Midway, waiting for the approaching Japanese fleet. When the battle began, American forces launched a surprise counterattack that destroyed 4 Japanese aircraft carriers, the same carriers that had participated in the attack on Pearl Harbor. The Battle of Midway became one of the most decisive turning points of the Pacific War.
Without the work of codebreakers, the outcome could have been very different. But secret codes were not only used for strategic military operations, they were also used for espionage, the hidden world of spies operating behind enemy lines. Fact number 14. Spies used incredibly creative methods to hide secret messages. During the war, intelligence agencies developed a wide variety of techniques for covert communication. One method involved microdots, tiny photographs of documents reduced to the size of a period on a printed page. These microscopic images could contain entire pages of information and be hidden inside letters or newspapers. Another technique involved invisible ink. Messages written with special chemical solutions could remain completely invisible until treated with the right reagent. Spies also used coded phrases hidden inside ordinary-looking letters. A seemingly harmless message about family matters could contain instructions for sabotage or intelligence gathering. In some cases, entire networks of resistance fighters depended on these hidden communications to coordinate their operations against occupying forces. Yet even the most advanced systems could fail when secrecy was compromised. Fact number 15. The capture of enemy codebooks sometimes gave immediate access to secret communications. Naval warfare often produced unexpected intelligence victories. When enemy ships were captured or sunk, codebooks could sometimes fall into Allied hands. One famous example occurred in 1941 when the German submarine U-110 was captured by the British Royal Navy. Before the submarine sank, British sailors managed to seize valuable Enigma codebooks and encryption materials. This intelligence provided Bletchley Park with critical information that helped accelerate the process of breaking German naval codes. In the hidden war of cryptography, every document, every intercepted signal, and every small mistake could shift the balance. But perhaps the most fascinating aspect of this secret war was how many of the people involved never received recognition during the conflict. Thousands of codebreakers worked under strict secrecy agreements. They were forbidden to discuss their work, even with their own families. For decades after the war ended, the world knew almost nothing about the hidden battle of codes. By the middle years of World War II, the secret war of codes had grown into an enormous and complex battlefield of its own. Behind every major military decision, hidden intelligence networks worked tirelessly to intercept, decode, and manipulate information. Messages traveled across continents through radio waves, courier networks, and secret transmissions buried within ordinary communications. But sometimes the most powerful code was not the one that protected information. It was the one that deliberately spread false information. Fact number 16. One of the most successful deception operations in history relied on coded messages sent by double agents. By 1943, Allied leaders were preparing for one of the most ambitious military operations ever attempted, the invasion of Nazi-occupied Europe. The operation would eventually become known as D-Day, the massive Allied landing in Normandy on June 6, 1944. But launching such an invasion required absolute secrecy. If German commanders learned the location and timing of the invasion, they could concentrate their forces and potentially destroy the Allied armies before they even secured the beaches. To prevent this, Allied intelligence agencies created an elaborate deception strategy known as Operation Bodyguard. The goal was simple: convince the German High Command that the invasion would occur somewhere else. Fact number 17. The Allies used a network of double agents to feed false information to German intelligence. One of the most important figures in this deception network was a Spanish double agent known by the code name Garbo. His real name was Juan Pujol Garcia. Garbo had an extraordinary talent for deception. Working with British intelligence, he convinced the Germans that he commanded a vast network of spies throughout Britain. In reality, this network existed entirely in his imagination. Through coded radio messages and secret communications, Garbo regularly sent reports to his German handlers describing troop movements, military preparations, and strategic plans. Many of these reports were completely fabricated.
Yet the Germans trusted him so deeply that they even awarded him the Iron Cross, one of Germany's highest military honors, without realizing he was working for the enemy. In the months leading up to D-Day, Garbo and other double agents sent carefully crafted messages suggesting that the Allied invasion would land not in Normandy, but at Pas de Calais, the narrowest point between Britain and France. The deception was incredibly convincing. Even after Allied troops had already landed in Normandy, German commanders believed the invasion was merely a diversion. They held back large armored divisions near Pas de Calais, waiting for a second, larger invasion that never came. Fact number 18. Coded radio traffic was used to simulate entire phantom armies. The deception surrounding D-Day went far beyond false spy reports. Allied planners created an entirely fictional military formation known as the 1st U.S. Army Group. This imaginary army was supposedly commanded by General George S. Patton, one of the most feared Allied generals. To make the deception believable, Allied forces constructed fake tanks, fake aircraft, and even fake landing craft made from inflatable materials and wood frames. These dummy vehicles were positioned in southeastern England, where German reconnaissance aircraft could photograph them. But visual deception alone was not enough. Radio operators began transmitting thousands of coded messages simulating the communications of a massive army preparing for invasion. German intelligence intercepted these signals and believed they were observing the buildup of a powerful force aimed directly at Pas de Calais. The illusion was so convincing that German commanders kept their strongest defenses in the wrong location when the real invasion began. This massive deception operation played a critical role in the success of D-Day. But deception in the War of Codes was not limited to Allied operations. Axis intelligence agencies also attempted to infiltrate Allied communication networks. Fact number 19. Some captured spies were secretly turned in to double agents. During the war, Britain's counterintelligence agency MI5 captured several German spies who had been sent to infiltrate the United Kingdom. Instead of simply imprisoning them, British intelligence officers offered these spies a dangerous choice. They could either cooperate with British intelligence or face execution. Many chose cooperation. These captured agents were then used to send controlled messages back to Germany through encrypted communications. This system became known as the double-cross system. Through this network, the Allies carefully controlled the flow of information reaching German intelligence. False reports, misleading intelligence, and carefully crafted narratives were sent back through these channels, slowly shaping German strategic expectations in ways that benefited Allied plans. By the time of the Normandy invasion, German intelligence networks in Britain had effectively been turned against themselves. But not every story in the War of Codes was of deception and strategy. Some were stories of extraordinary human effort, individuals who spent years locked in a silent intellectual battle against enemy encryption. Fact number 20. Many of the codebreakers who helped win the war remained anonymous for decades. At Bletchley Park alone, more than 10,000 people worked during the peak of wartime codebreaking operations. The workforce included mathematicians, linguists, engineers, typists, translators, and radio intercept operators. Their work was so secret that even after the war ended, most of them were forbidden to discuss it. Families never knew what their relatives had done during the war. Friends assumed they had been doing ordinary clerical work. The British government maintained strict secrecy around the ultra-intelligence program for decades. It was not until the 1970s that the true story of Bletchley Park began publicly to emerge. Historians later concluded that the intelligence produced there may have shortened the war in Europe by 2 to 4 years, saving millions of lives. But even beyond Bletchley Park, similar efforts were happening in the United States, the Soviet Union, and other allied nations. Entire intelligence communities were dedicated to intercepting and deciphering enemy communications. The War of Codes had become one of the most decisive and least visible fronts of World War II. Yet even after the war ended in 1945, the legacy of these secret battles did not disappear.
The lessons learned in cryptography during the war would shape the intelligence agencies, computer science innovations, and digital encryption systems of the modern world. Machines developed to break enemy codes would eventually contribute to the creation of early computers. The hidden war of mathematicians and linguists had quietly helped launch the technological age. But before we conclude this story, there are still a few final truths to uncover: the lasting impact of wartime cryptography and the extraordinary legacy left behind by those who fought this invisible war. When the guns finally fell silent in 1945, the world saw the end of the deadliest conflict in human history. Cities lay in ruins, millions had perished, and entire nations had been reshaped by 6 years of total war. The stories most people heard after the war were those of soldiers on the front lines, the great battles, the invasions, and the leaders who directed them. But behind those visible events, another war had been fought in silence. A war of signals, codes, mathematics, and patience. For decades, the full story of that hidden conflict remained buried under layers of secrecy. The governments that had invested enormous resources into code breaking did not want their capabilities revealed. Intelligence agencies understood that the techniques developed during the war could still be useful in the uncertain world that followed. And so, thousands of people who had played critical roles in breaking enemy codes returned quietly to civilian life. Many never spoke about what they had done. Some took their secrets to the grave. The silence surrounding these operations lasted so long that for years after the war, historians struggled to understand how certain Allied victories had unfolded so quickly and decisively. One example was the Battle of the Atlantic. During the early years of the war, German U-boats had nearly succeeded in cutting off Britain from vital supply routes across the ocean. Convoys of merchant ships carrying food, fuel, and weapons were sinking at an alarming rate. In some months, Allied shipping losses were so severe that British leaders feared the country might eventually starve. But then, something changed. Convoys began avoiding submarine ambushes more frequently. Allied warships appeared in the exact locations where German U-boats were operating. Submarines that once hunted freely across the Atlantic suddenly found themselves hunted. At the time, German commanders could not understand how the Allies seemed to know so much about their operations. The answer, hidden deep within British intelligence circles, was the success of the Enigma code-breaking effort. The Ultra-Intelligence Program had allowed Allied commanders to read large portions of German naval communications. This information made it possible to reroute convoys away from danger and send anti-submarine forces directly toward U-boat patrol areas. Yet the Allies faced a dangerous dilemma. If German leaders ever discovered that their codes had been broken, they would immediately change their encryption systems, and the intelligence advantage would disappear overnight. And so, the Allies had to be extremely careful. Sometimes they deliberately allowed attacks to happen rather than reveal that they had prior knowledge of enemy movements. Convoys were occasionally left exposed if saving them might expose the secret of code breaking. It was a harsh and painful reality of wartime intelligence. Lives were sometimes sacrificed to protect information that could ultimately save far more lives in the long run. This hidden balancing act illustrates just how complex the war of codes had become. But the impact of wartime cryptography did not end with military victory. In fact, some of the technological innovations created during the struggle to break enemy codes would go on to shape the modern world. One of the most important figures in that transformation was the British mathematician Alan Turing. During the war, Turing had helped develop the bomb bay machines that dramatically accelerated the process of deciphering Enigma messages. These machines represented a major step toward automated computing. After the war, Turing continued working on the concept of programmable machines that could perform complex calculations far beyond human speed. His ideas became foundational to the development of modern computer science. Today, historians widely recognize Turing as one of the fathers of modern computing.
The connection between wartime code breaking and the birth of computers is not a coincidence. Breaking complex encryption required machines capable of analyzing enormous numbers of possibilities at incredible speed. The demand for such machines pushed engineers and mathematicians to develop technologies that had never existed before. The early computing devices used during the war eventually evolved into the digital computers that power the modern world. In a sense, the secret code war of World War II helped accelerate the arrival of the information age. But the legacy of wartime cryptography extends even further. Modern internet security, digital banking systems, encrypted messaging applications, and military communication networks all rely on principles that grew out of the same field of cryptography that was so fiercely contested during the war. Every time a secure message is sent across the internet today, it is protected by mathematical systems that trace their roots back to the same ideas that occupied the code breakers of Bletchley Park and the cryptanalysts of the Pacific War. The silent battles of mathematicians and linguists helped create the foundations of modern digital security. Yet, despite the enormous impact of these efforts, recognition from many of the people involved came slowly. It was not until the 1970s that governments finally began declassifying large portions of wartime code-breaking operations. As historians and researchers began examining these records, the incredible scale of the secret war became clear. Bletchley Park alone had employed thousands of people working in rotating shifts around the clock. The facility operated like a hidden city of intelligence. Rows of intercept operators listened constantly to enemy radio transmissions. Analysts studied message patterns. Engineers built new machines. Linguists translated intercepted texts. It was a massive collaborative effort involving people from many different backgrounds and professions, and similar efforts existed in other countries as well. In the United States, the Navy's cryptanalysis unit, known as Station Hypo, played a key role in breaking Japanese naval codes. Their work helped reveal Japanese plans before the Battle of Midway, one of the most important turning points in the Pacific War. Across the Soviet Union, intelligence officers also conducted their own cryptographic operations, intercepting and analyzing enemy communications throughout the Eastern Front. The War of Codes had truly been global. But perhaps the most remarkable aspect of this hidden conflict was that it rarely involved violence directly. Instead of bullets and bombs, the primary weapons were logic, patience, and creativity.
Victory often depended on the ability to recognize patterns in seemingly meaningless strings of numbers and letters. A small mistake in an encrypted message could unlock a crucial secret. A clever deception operation could mislead an entire army. A single breakthrough in cryptography could change the outcome of a battle. These quiet victories rarely appeared in wartime headlines, yet they shaped the course of the conflict in profound ways. Today, historians generally agree that intelligence gained through code breaking significantly shortened the war. Some estimates suggest that the success of Allied cryptography may have saved millions of lives by accelerating the defeat of Axis forces. And yet, for the people who carried out this work, the reward was rarely fame or public recognition. Most simply returned home and resumed ordinary lives. Teachers, engineers, office workers, scientists, many of them blending quietly back into civilian society. Only decades later did the world begin to understand just how important their work had been. The War of Codes remains one of the most fascinating chapters of World War II history, a reminder that sometimes the most decisive battles are the ones that remain invisible. The next time we look back at the great events of the Second World War, the landings, the tank battles, the naval clashes, it is worth remembering that behind many of those moments stood a hidden network of minds working tirelessly in secret. Men and women who fought not with weapons, but with ideas. And in doing so, they helped shape the outcome of history itself. If you made it all the way to the end of this story, leave the word enigma in the comments so we know you stayed until the final moment. Tell us in the comments which of these secret code stories surprised you the most. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you enjoy deep historical stories like this one. And keep watching, because on your screen right now, you'll see more videos from this channel exploring the hidden stories, forgotten strategies, and untold moments of the greatest conflicts in history.